Please be seated. Will all members-elect and guests please take their seats? Please be seated. Thank you. Thank you for taking your seats. The hour of 12 noon having arrived, pursuant to the Constitution of the State of California, the organizational session for the 2011-2012 regular session will be in order. I am E. Dobson Wilson, Chief Clerk and Parliamentarian of the California State Assembly, and I will be presiding over this portion of today's session. A couple of announcements. Pursuant to the Assembly rules, please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices during today's session. Secondly, we will defer the introduction of guests until after the election of the Speaker. The first order of business is the roll call of the Assembly members-elect. The clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Calderon, Campos, Carter, Cedillo, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Davis, Dickinson, Donnelly, Ing, Fior, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Furutani, Gaines, Galgiani, Garrick, Gatto, Gordon, Gorell, Grove, Hagman, Halderman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Hueso, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lara, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mansour, Mendoza, Miller, Mitchell, Monning, Morrell, Nestande, Nilsson, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, John A. Perez, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Yamada.
A quorum is present. Without objection, a request from Assemblymember-elect John A. Perez to have guests and photographers on the floor will be granted. Will the members-elect and guests please stand and remain standing for the prayer, presentation of the colors, and the Pledge of Allegiance. The prayer this afternoon will be offered by Rabbi Alan I. Freeling. Rabbi Freeling is the former executive director of the Human Relations Commission for the City of Los Angeles. He is also the first Rabbi Emeritus for life of the University Synagogue, which he led for 30 years. Rabbi Freeling.
When thinking about our being together this afternoon, and when we carefully consider the awesome challenges and responsibilities which each of you are about to assume, as this new season of your laboring together gets underway, it is my hope and prayer that you will allow the biblical prophet Isaiah to be your constant guide today and during the many days ahead, especially when profound problems and confounding perplexities seem to be the most daunting. Our ancient sage would urge you to turn and say to one another, "Come now, let us reason together." Why? Because it'll be by this means that you will be most productive, individually and as an august body. In turn, we who have called you to unconditionally represent us to the very best of your ability will be inclined to take measure of your many accomplishments and then to declare that by your deeds You have caused this place to be the city of righteousness, the faithful city. So, what is required of you as you selflessly and tirelessly do the people's business? That you be strong and resolute in you doing everything possible to respond to the needs of every child and adult who seeks your attention, your care, your compassion, your strength, your understanding, your wisdom. Despite the economic uncertainties and those related societal burdens that now rest upon your shoulders, prudently listen to Isaiah. He reminds you that you have no other choice but to act courageously and faithfully. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, lift up the downtrodden, and make it possible for all of us who sent you here to be assured of a better tomorrow and the next day after that. May God be with each and all of you now and always, and together we say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Freeling. The next order of business is the presentation of colors and the Pledge of Allegiance. Today we are joined by the Color Guard of the Governor and Adjutant General of the California National Guard. The Color Guard will please present the colors. Will family and guests remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, which today will be led by Assembly Member-elect Charles M. Calderon, who is the Dean of the Assembly. The Dean of the Assembly is the member with the longest tenure in this body. Mr. Calderon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members and guests, would you please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
Thank you, Mr. Calderon. The Color Guard is dismissed. Please be seated. Absences for the day, there are none. The next order of business is the reading of the certificate of election from the Secretary of State of duly elected members. Without objection, the certificate will be deemed read and printed in the Daily Journal. The next order of business is the administering of the oath of office to the Assembly members-elect. The long-standing process for administering the oath is as follows. The reading clerk will read a list of all 58 counties in alphabetical order. As the name of the county or counties you represent is called, please stand and remain standing until the list of all 58 counties is completed. Then the oath of office will be administered by Tani G. Cantil Sakaue, Justice of the 3rd District Court of Appeal and Chief Justice-elect of the California Supreme Court. The clerk will call the roll by counties.
Alameda, Alpine, Amador, Butte, Calaveras, Colusa, Contra Costa, Del Norte, El Dorado, Fresno, Glenn, Humboldt, Imperial, Inyo, Kern, Kings, Lassen, Los Angeles, Madera, Marin, Mariposa, Mendocino, Merced, Modoc, Mono, Monterey, Napa, Nevada, Orange, Placer, Plumas, Riverside, Sacramento, San Benito, San Bernardino, San Diego, San Francisco, San Joaquin, San Luis Obispo, San Mateo, Santa Barbara, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Shasta, Sierra, Siskiyou, Solano, Sonoma, Stanislaus, Sutter, Tehama, Trinity, Tulare, Tuolumne, Ventura, Yolo, Yuba.
Justice Sakaue will now administer the oath of office to the Assembly members-elect.
Good morning. Please raise your right hand to repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations.
Congratulations, members. Please take your seats. Congratulations. Please take your seats. Thank you. But I think we can't hear it. One quick announcement. The Sergeant at Arms will be circulating the oaths of office for your official signature. In case you didn't hear me, I'll make that announcement again. The Sergeant at Arms will be circulating the oaths of office for your official signature. Thank you, and again, congratulations, and thank you, Justice Sakaue. Thank you. The next order of business is the election of a Speaker of the Assembly for the 2011-2012 regular session. Nominations are now open for the office of Speaker of the Assembly. Assemblymember Ng.
Good morning, members. I rise today to nominate our friend and colleague, John A. Pettis, to serve as Speaker of the Assembly for the 2011-2012 session of the California Legislature. From the moment he became Speaker last March, Speaker Pettis has focused like a laser on jobs and economic recovery. And that focus is the right thing for California, and it's the right thing for our Assembly. Speaker Pettis knows that we can't get out of the recession and we can't solve the state's ongoing budget problems without a real commitment to creating and saving jobs. And that's why he led the fight for a California jobs budget. And throughout the long budget fight, he made sure protecting and creating jobs stayed front and center. I have to say that under Speaker Pettis' leadership, the budget process was the most open that I've seen since I've come to Sacramento. And in the coming weeks and months under his leadership, I know that my constituents will have the information and context they need regarding the tough budget choices facing our state. One of the best things about Speaker Pettis' leadership is that he is committed to helping each of us serve the people that we represent as best that we can. And that doesn't just mean Democrats. Ask my good friend Assemblyman Fletcher, the author of Chelsea's Law. which the Speaker reached across the aisle and strongly advocated for, or the Republicans who served as committee chairs for the first time in years under Speaker John A. Perez. I first met Speaker Perez when he came to a class that I was teaching at one of the local community colleges. And after he spoke, the students said that he was extremely focused, passionate, thoughtful, and creative. And when it came to the end of the class and the evaluations were due, one student wrote on her paper, on her evaluation, that John A. Perez was one of the best speakers she'd ever seen. And that's true then, and it will continue to be true under the leadership of this Speaker, John A. Perez. So my fellow members of this California State Assembly, it is for all these reasons and more: the right focus, his commitment to the Assembly, his commitment to the people we represent, his commitment to increasing transparency, and most of all, his standing up and speaking when it counts. These are the reasons I am honored today to nominate John A. Perez to serve again as our 68th Speaker of the California Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Ng. Assemblymember Tony Atkins is recognized to second the nomination. Assemblymember Atkins.
Thank you. I rise in support of this motion. As a new member of the People's House, it is an honor for me to make my first act the seconding of the nomination of John A. Perez to serve as Speaker of the Assembly. I'm pleased to continue my public service career in this Assembly. I am even more pleased to be joining this body under the leadership of John Perez. California working families are facing a crisis because of the governor's child care veto. It was Speaker Perez who stepped up and got the first 5 commissions involved and even put up Assembly money to help prevent this crisis. That's bold leadership and concern for Californians that I want to see continue. As a new member, I also appreciate the fact that Speaker Perez is in his second term. That will give the Assembly greater strength and stability as we work to help our state recover and to put our state on solid ground for the future. And finally, on a more personal note, as a person who started out in life from very humble beginnings, I'm honored to be able to support for Speaker a leader who understands disadvantaged communities, underrepresented communities, and who seeks to ensure a voice for fairness and equality for all people in our state. As we're here at this moment, I'm mindful of the fact that a hearing of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is underway, with a debate scheduled on the issue of marriage equality for members of the LGBT community. My spouse Jennifer and I are fortunate to be recognized as a married couple, but at this time that opportunity is no longer available to others. As members of the LGBT community, I cannot help but be extremely proud of Speaker Perez for being the first California Speaker of the Assembly to represent us in the LGBT community. So I am honored to stand here with all of you today as a newly minted Assembly member, eager to work with our new governor and to continue with effective leadership under John A. Perez as Speaker. I urge my colleagues to join me in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Atkins. Assemblymember Stephen Bradford is recognized to second the nomination.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honored to second the nomination for John A. Perez. One of the things I admire most about Speaker John A. Perez is that even if we weren't in economic challenges and recession, he would be committed to job creation and job development here in the state of California. We both represent districts that have been greatly impacted and missed the economic booms of the last few years. And I appreciate that this Speaker, John A. Perez, is committed to creating new jobs in the green sector, but most importantly, making sure that everyone in this state is represented in this burgeoning green economy. I like Speaker Perez because he created a job earlier this last year that helped save the environment by recycling more carpet, which created more jobs not only in his district but throughout the state of California, creating more job opportunities. He also helped with students who are seeking careers in the allied health profession by streamlining that ability to get their degrees sooner to help in this ever-needed field of healthcare here in the state of California. That's the creativity that John A. Perez has brought to this body and will continue to bring to this body as our next speaker. Members, while the day is truly a celebration, we have some tough challenges ahead of us. John A. Perez has the leadership for these tough days ahead of us. John A. Perez has the commitment for these tough days ahead of us. John A. Perez has the creativity for these tough days ahead of us. Members, John A. Perez has earned our trust. Most importantly, he's earned our respect. And in doing so, he has earned another term as our Speaker of this great body. I second the nomination of John A. Perez. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Bradford. Are there any further nominations for Speaker of the Assembly? Hearing none, nominations for the office of Speaker are now closed. Prepared to move to the vote? Is there any objection to unanimous consent to permit the election of the Honorable John A. Perez as Speaker of the Assembly for the 2011-12 regular session by acclamation of the members? Hearing no objection, such shall be the order. The Honorable John A. Perez is elected Speaker by acclamation. Congratulations. I'm appointing the following members to escort the Speaker-elect to the rostrum. Please retire to the rear of the chamber as your name is called. Assemblymember Tom Amiano, Assemblymember Connie Conway, Assemblymember Paul Fong, Assemblymember Felipe Fuentes, Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal, Assemblymember Holly Mitchell, and Assemblymember Nancy Skinner. Will you please escort the Speaker-elect, John A. Perez, to the rostrum? Justice Sakue will administer the oath of office to the Speaker-elect.
I state your name.
I, John A. Perez,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Members of the Assembly, I want to thank you for once again placing your trust and your confidence in me to serve as your Speaker for another term. I'm honored and deeply humbled in your faith in my service. Under the Constitution, the Speaker of the Assembly and the President pro tempore of the Senate are required to announce their goals and objectives for the legislative session during the inaugural meeting of that session. We, I think, all know precisely what our goal must be: getting Californians back to work and putting California's fiscal house in order. These must be our singular focus. And it's fitting that we start this session in the presence of so many of our friends and family. Serving in office can at times be difficult, but having loved ones to return home to makes serving our state that much easier. But your presence also underscores the fact that California itself is a family. And as a family, we need to overcome our challenges together. And I want to particularly welcome our newest members who've asked for the responsibility to serve our state in a historic moment. I'm looking forward to working and getting to know each and every one of you over our work together in these next 2 years. As Speaker, one of my most important roles is to help each of you be the best representatives for the communities that you represent that you can be. So I want you to know that my door is always open to you. This is particularly important because the challenges facing our state will require a united and focused effort from all of us. The fact is underscored by the presence of so many of our constitutional officers and state leaders, and I want to thank them all for attending with us today. Each and every one of us knows that the economic pain racking California will not subside until 2.3 million Californians who are currently on the unemployment line find decent quality jobs. Job creation is our top priority, and it's central to putting California back on a pathway to prosperity. This is part of our overall budget challenge as well. Until Californians go back to work, our deficit will not be eliminated. As we continue the hard work of finding those solutions in the new year, we should look at what we were able to accomplish in the past legislative session. With respect to jobs, I'm proud of what we accomplished together. We came together and approved tax credits to increase green job growth and to jumpstart the construction industry. We approved a $30 million package for small businesses that increase access to capital so that they can expand their businesses and hire new workers. We sat down and I asked small business leaders to identify areas where the state can help them recover, and we came together to support that package as a group. That is our mission, to create jobs for Californians. Each of us has been working in our respective districts. I've held job fairs throughout the 46th Assembly District, as I know many of you have done the same. But we absolutely know that all of this work is not enough. It's simply a down payment on the kind of job creation efforts we need to be working on together. That's why I want to encourage each and every one of you to put forward your ideas on job creation. This is work that we must accomplish together. And it's vital to solving our overall budget problems as well. We must find budget solutions that don't cause catastrophic job losses. That was our primary aim during the last budget. And I'm pleased that together we were able to keep 400,000 teachers, cops, firefighters, healthcare workers, private sector workers, and small businesses working. While the fiscal year 10-11 budget process is concluded, there's one issue that's remained a point of contention between Governor Schwarzenegger and the Assembly. That's the vital program that assists low-income parents afford child care and keep their jobs. This is a program that keeps working people working. The folks who utilize the program are people who successfully struggled to get themselves off welfare. They're working to make a better life for themselves and for their families, and that's truly admirable. With the governor's decision to unilaterally wipe out this program, he put more than 60,000 Californians in danger of having to go back on the welfare rolls simply because they can't afford child care. Throughout the longest budget process in California history, we maintained that our number one priority was protecting jobs, and this is emblematic of the kind of cuts that kill jobs and hurt the economy that we spent 100 days trying to avoid. Despite the governor's line item veto, we've stepped up and provided bridge funding to keep these programs operational through the holidays by transferring money from our own budget savings in the Assembly. We partnered with First Five commissions all throughout the state of California to keep these parents and child care providers working. That was the first step. Today, I'm taking the second step by introducing a bill that will fully restore this program and keep parents and child care providers working. We cannot and we must not stand idly by while others force parents back onto welfare rolls and drive child care providers onto the unemployment lines. Failing to act will cost taxpayers far more than the cost of providing child care. This is about jobs, and I don't believe we can afford to take even a single step back on job creation and job retention. We're facing some difficult choices, and we can't make our future problems worse by making the wrong decisions in addressing the present crisis. The budget is a document of extraordinary complexity, and we need to make sure that the people of California know very clearly why we make the decisions we do, which means we need to build on the efforts to increase transparency in the process. This past year, we held over 100 budget hearings here in Sacramento, more than any of our predecessors. But we also went beyond Sacramento, holding budget forums in every region of California, because the people of California must be included in that conversation. We posted the salaries of legislative staffers on our website because we have an obligation to ensure that the people have access to the information that will hold us all accountable. And when the outrageous and shameful situation in the city of Bell made the light of day, the Assembly responded swiftly and forcefully to ensure that the flagrant, arrogant abuse of power in that city couldn't take root in other cities. Government needs to be held accountable at every level, local, state, and federal. The city of Vernon, in my own district, provides another example of why this is true. For years, the entrenched leaders of that city have operated with impunity and without any shed of accountability. They've abused the trust of the taxpayers and been bad neighbors to the cities that surround them. Recent reports have shown that the city operates something close to a racket, and this is unacceptable, which is why Cameron Smythe, the chair of the local government committee, and I joined together to introduce a bipartisan bill that will disincorporate the city of Vernon. The episodes in Vernon and Bell clearly underscore the need for openness and transparency in office, and we must hold ourselves to that same standard. Frankly, the challenges facing our state demand that every Californian be part of the conversation, which means that California must be able to have a voice in the process. I firmly believe that more transparency will help our process be stronger, and the final product will be much better for it, whether it's a budget or whether it's a piece of legislation. This is important, as moving forward on closing another massive deficit in a way that's consistent with California's values. However, this year, the process will be fundamentally different. The voters, in their wisdom, passed Proposition 25, which amended the Constitution to require a simple majority to pass the budget. I believe they did this for two reasons. First, to decrease gridlock, and second, to increase accountability. Frustrated with years of budgets that were delayed, voters decided that California's budget should be approved by a simple majority, as is the case in 47 other states and the federal government. But just because this budget can be passed by a simple majority of 41 doesn't mean that only 41 members have a responsibility for putting California's fiscal house in order. That's a responsibility shared by all of us. I want to speak directly to my Republican colleagues. Over the past 9 months, I've enjoyed working with you and occasionally sparring with you. And I know that each of you has been motivated by the same basic desire to serve our state. And I firmly believe you have a role to play in crafting policy for California, which is why I've appointed Republicans to serve as chairs of 2 committees. We're facing a dire situation, one that was created before any of us had the opportunity to serve in this chamber. But we're serving now, and each of us has the responsibility to find the solutions to those challenges. No party has a monopoly on wisdom or good ideas, and right now, California needs wise and dedicated people of all areas of the spectrum working together to move us forward as a state. We're facing a $25 billion deficit this year, with projections of continuing huge deficits for the next several years to come. The sheer size of that number is breathtaking. Closing a deficit of this magnitude will require some very difficult votes. But no vote we ever take is going to come close to the pain that a person feels waking up each day wondering how they're going to provide for their family without a job. That must be our focus. We're privileged to serve, and this is the price of service. We're elected to do a job, and we must do it together. Next month, Jerry Brown will again be sworn in as Governor of California. He's already begun meeting with legislative leaders of both parties to figure out ways in which we can close our deficit. He and I have had several productive conversations, but we both recognize that our entire state must be involved in the process. He's committed to increasing transparency in the budget. He shares our commitment in not only closing the deficit, but in finally ending the structural deficit that's only been magnified by the recession. Until we eliminate our long-term structural problems, we continue to struggle with endless deficits and growing debt. In 2008, the global financial system seized up and nearly collapsed, sending our economy into a tailspin. In 2009, we struggled for a year to keep the state solvent. In 2010, our focus was to prevent the crisis from getting worse, especially with respect to jobs. And in 2011, we must make this the year when we stop reacting and start moving forward. The best way to ensure a strong future for our state is to bring our budget back into balance and restore long-term stability to our finances so we can make the kind of investments that will ensure California's future remains golden. This will not be easy, nor will solving the budget come overnight. But we must work with Governor-elect Brown and our partners in the Senate to develop a budget plan that not only meets the obligations to balance the budget 1 year at a time, but also puts us on a disciplined multi-year program to eliminate the structural deficit. And we have to approach this not as Democrats and Republicans, but as Californians. This is a goal worthy of the people of California, and one I'm absolutely confident that we can meet. Getting our finances in order will allow us to build the infrastructure to tap the job potential in fields like green manufacturing and biotechnology, which are already strengthening our economy. We know that these will revolutionize the world economy the same way technology was able to do so in the last century. Those jobs are going to be created somewhere, and it's our job to make sure that they're created right here in California. California is the natural home to these industries. We can maintain our status as a global powerhouse if we make the right investments in our future now. Each of us benefited from earlier generations of Californians who made the decision to invest in opportunities for each and every one of our citizens. That's the legacy that's given California an almost mythical stature in our nation and across the globe. But that legacy is threatened and we must respond accordingly. It'll be difficult, but to paraphrase President Clinton, there's nothing wrong with California that can't be fixed by what's right with California. Our state is known for its exceptionalism, inventiveness, and creativity, and we will use these traits to overcome our challenges. We must close our deficit responsibly. We must put our state on a focused, disciplined pathway to eliminate the structural deficit. And we must continue to fight for policies that will put unemployed Californians back to work. It's an enormous challenge, it's an enormous responsibility, but it's one worthy of the people of California. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get to work. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to the order of business. Members, as you have seen, we are joined by many esteemed guests for this session. We've had the high honor of having received the oath of office from the next Chief Justice of California, the Honorable Tani Cantul-Sakawi. We have been joined by U.S. House of Representatives member Kevin McCarthy. We also welcome some of our current constitutional officers, the State Treasurer, the Honorable Bill Lockyer, Board of Equalization's member, District 4, the Honorable Jerome Horton, Speaker Emeritus Bob Hertzberg, and we also have the privilege of having two of our constitutional officers-elect with us, the Lieutenant Governor-elect Gavin Newsom and Insurance Commissioner-elect Dave Jones. And I want to thank my good friend Rabbi Freeling for being with us and helping lead our prayer this morning. It means a great deal to have you with us today, Rabbi. Throughout the chamber, we're also joined by many former members and distinguished public officials from throughout the state of California. Welcome and thank you all for being with us as we celebrate and, quite frankly, pivot to focusing on the difficult work ahead of us. Our next order of business is the appointment of the Speaker pro tempore, and I'm appointing Assemblywoman Fiona Ma to this office and a select committee to escort her to the rostrum. Will the following members please retire to the rear of the chambers to escort Assemblymember Ma forward? Stephen Bradford, Susan Bonilla, Connie Conway, Mary Hayashi, Richard Gordon, and Henry Perea. Please escort the Speaker pro tempore-elect to the rostrum. I'd now like to ask Chief Justice-elect Sakil Sakawi to administer the oath of office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Fiona Ma,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Members, there are several resolutions at the desk, and copies are on your desks and your laptops. Our next order of business is the adoption of our House rules. H.R. 1. Ms. Skinner, the first resolution relates to the House rules. Are you prepared to take up this measure?
Mr. Speaker, I am. Mr. Speaker and members, H.R.
1 second, please. The clerk will read.
House Resolution 1 by Assemblymember Skinner relative to the adoption of the standing rules.
You may open.
Mr. Speaker and members, H.R. 1 adopts the standing rules of the Assembly. My mic is falling. For the 2011-12 regular session. H.R. 1 is the same as the 2009-10 House rules, except for the following changes. It allows submission of committee reports to be done electronically. It adds the majority policy leader to the list of officers of the Assembly and specifies his or her duties. It directs the chief clerk to transmit copies of adopted Assembly joint resolutions electronically. It specifies that any bill language amending the Stem Cell Initiative Act must sit for 14 days prior to passage and has a vote threshold of 70% or 56 members, as required by the initiative itself. It clarifies that members are prohibited from texting a lobbyist during committee or floor sessions. It cross-references AB 1585, the Accountability Administrative Review Committee, Chapter 7, Statutes of 2010, which allows state and local government agencies to submit reports electronically to the Assembly. It makes a few technical and grammatical changes. In addition, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Mr. Hagman, for what purpose?
For comment on the bill.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Republican caucus does have some problems with the new issue of the rules. We respectfully ask for a no vote on these rules.
Seeing no further debate, Ms. Skinner, you may close.
The rules are as described. They are on each member's electronically on the computers at their desks, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Members, please activate your voting mechanisms if you haven't already done so. It appears that you all have, but if you have not, please do so now. The motion before us is now available. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 52, noes 28. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Calderon, are you ready to take up House Resolution number 2 relative to non-member officers?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, we'll take up House Resolution 2. The clerk will read. House Resolution 2 by Assemblymember John A. Perez relative to the election of officers of the Assembly for the 2011-2012 regular session.
Mr. Calderon, you may open on the resolution.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, it is with great pleasure that I offer House Resolution number 2 on behalf of Speaker John Perez to designate the non-member officers of the Assembly for the 2011-12 regular session. They are Mr. E. Dotson Wilson as Chief Clerk, Mr. Ronald E. Payne as Chief Sergeant at Arms, Father Constantine Papademos, of St. Catherine Greek Orthodox Church as chaplain, and Dr. Ivan L. Williams, Sr., Minister Director for the Northern California Conference of Seventh-day Adventists as alternate chaplain.
Very good. Seeing no members seeking recognition, shall proceed to the vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 80, noes 0. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Wilson, Mr. Payne, Father Papademos, Dr. Williams, would you please proceed for the administration of the oath of office?
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Constantine Papademos,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Congratulations to each of you. Mr. Calderon, the next resolution is a housekeeping item. Are you prepared to take up House Resolution number 3?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will read.
House Resolution 3 by Assemblymember John A. Perez relative to the organization of the Assembly for the 2011-2012 regular session.
Mr. Calderon, you may proceed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, House Resolution 3 is a routine housekeeping resolution which does the following. It authorizes the Chief Clerk and the Sergeant-at-Arms to receive warrants from the Controller to pay members, officers, and staff of the Assembly. It also requires the Chief Clerk to provide copies of Assembly weekly histories to specified government offices and accredited newspaper representatives. And it specifies that during the organizational recess, no bill can be introduced at the desk except by a person designated in writing by the member and the designation filed with the Chief Clerk. Ask the Chief Clerk.
Seeing no further debate, we will now move to a vote on House Resolution number 3. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 80, noes 0. The resolution is adopted. Members, I'm pleased to announce a few selected members of my leadership team. For Majority Floor Leader, Charles M. Calderon. For Majority Policy Leader, Mike Fuhr. Rules Committee Chair, Nancy Skinner. And Democratic Caucus Chair, Jerry Hill. At the end of the session today, members will have the opportunity to introduce their first legislative measures of the session. I'm ordering the Assembly desk to remain open today for bill introductions until 4 p.m. and during the organizational recess for the purpose of bill introductions. Members, we will recess the regular session for the purpose of convening the first extraordinary session. We're in the first extraordinary session. Without objection, we will substitute the prayer, pledge, and other opening procedures from the 2011-2012 regular session for those items in the first extraordinary session. Governor Schwarzenegger has issued a proclamation to convene the legislature in extraordinary session. The clerk will read the proclamation from the governor.
Whereas on this day, pursuant to Section 10F of Article 4 of the Constitution of the State of California, I proclaimed a fiscal emergency. And whereas on this date, I'm submitting to the legislature proposed legislation to address that fiscal emergency. And whereas this extraordinary occasion having arisen and now existing, it requires that the legislature of the State of California be convened in extraordinary session. Now, therefore, I, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Governor of the State of California, by virtue and power and authority vested in me in accordance with Section 10F of the Article 4 of the Constitution of the State of California, do hereby convene the legislature of the State of California to meet in extraordinary session at Sacramento, California on the 6th day of December 2010 at a time to be determined, to consider and act upon legislation to address the fiscal emergency proclaimed by me this day, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the great seal of the State of California to be affixed on the 6th day of December 2010. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Governor of California.
And we are so convened. The next order of business is the election of Speaker. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent that the vote and oath of office for John A. Perez on December 6, 2010 in the regular session be substituted in the first extraordinary session.
Very good. Mr. Calderon, that motion requires a second. The motion is seconded by Mr. Hagman. It's been moved and seconded that the unanimous consent be granted for a vote of the oath of office for myself as Speaker in the regular session be substituted for the first extraordinary session. Seeing and hearing no objection, the motion carries. Mr. Calderon, you may proceed with your next motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the permanent standing rules of the Assembly contained in House Resolution Number 1 for the 11-12 regular session be hereby adopted as the rules for 11-12 for the first extraordinary session, and that the vote on that matter in general session be substituted herein.
And the motion is seconded by Ms. Conway. Very good. Is there any objection to substituting the vote for H.R. 1 in the regular session for the vote for H.R. 1 in the first extraordinary session? Seeing and hearing no objections, we'll substitute the prior roll call. Ayes 52, noes 28. The motion carries. Mr. Calderon.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Speaker pro tem appointed by the Speaker and the non-member officers named in House Resolution Number 2 in 2011-12 regular session be deemed the Speaker pro tempore and the non-member officers in the first extraordinary session, and that their respective oaths in the regular session be substituted in the first extraordinary session.
This motion also requires a second. Seconded by Ms. Conway. Is there any objection to substituting the vote on H.R. 2 in the regular session for a vote on H.R. 2 in the first extraordinary session? Seeing and hearing no objection, we'll substitute the prior roll. Ayes 80s, no 0. The motion carries. Mr. Calderon, you may proceed on H.R. 3.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move that House Resolution Number 3 and regular session relative to the payment of members and distribution of weekly histories be deemed adopted in the first extraordinary session, and the roll for general session on this matter be substituted herein.
Mr. Calderon moves. Ms. Conway seconds. Is there any objection to substituting the vote on H.R. 2 in the regular session for the vote on H.R. 2 in the first extraordinary session? Seeing and hearing no objection, we will substitute the prior roll. Ayes 80, noes 0. The motion carries. For the first extraordinary session, there are letters at the desk relative to the leadership of the Democratic and Republican caucuses, and they will serve in the capacities to which they were appointed or elected in the 2011-2012 regular session. We have completed the organizational tasks of the 2011-2012 first extraordinary session. Mr. Calderon moves and Ms. Conway seconds that the first extraordinary session is adjourned under call of the Speaker. We are now back in regular session. Members, a few announcements. Our next regularly scheduled floor session is Monday, January 3rd, 2011, or upon call of the Speaker. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized for the purpose of an adjourn in memory.
Mr. Speaker, while we have dispensed with floor statements on adjourn in memory for requests that have already been submitted to the desk, it is appropriate that we do recognize the passing of two former members. The first is the Honorable Jenny Oropesa, Senator, someone who started in my office many, many years ago, is now, I think, in a better place. During her tenure in the Assembly and the Senate, she represented Long Beach. She passed away October 20, 2010, after an extended illness. Second, we also note the passing of the Honorable Alistair McAllister, first committee chair that I ever served under. His ethics were unmatched and have been unmatched, I believe, since he was first elected. He passed away on November 8th, 2010, at the age of 80. When we reconvene in January, we will allow time for members to speak on these and other adjourn in memories.
Thank you, Mr. Calderon. The remaining request to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the Daily Journal. If members will please bring those requests forward if you have not already done so. Members and guests, we are waiting for a transmittal of a SCR from the Senate, so we will be waiting for the next several minutes as the Senate takes their action and transmits that to us, and we will proceed at that point. Mr. Calderon.
Mr. Speaker, I just might, by way of explanation, explain that this is the usual procedure. We are always waiting on the Senate.
Having served in the Senate, we appreciate your insight, Mr. Calderon.
We're waiting for SR1. So if you get yelled on, hello?
Members, if you will please return to your desks. We are ready to proceed with the day's business. Members and guests, if you would please return to your seats. Members, a delegation from the Senate is in the rear of the chambers to inform us the California State Senate has organized itself for the 2011-2012 regular session. I invite Senator Evans to address the body from my desk and announce the members of the Senate delegation. Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to announce that the Senate is duly organized for the 2011-2012 session.
And it appears that you have
I have a whole group of senators here.
Would you care to introduce the senators?
Senator Fuller, Senator Berryhill, Senator Hernandez, Senator Vargas, and Senator LaMalfa.
Welcome,
and Senator
thank you.
Anderson.
We'd like to thank our colleagues from the Senate. We'd also like to thank them for transmitting SCR1 for us so we may proceed in the day's business. Members, there's a resolution at the desk relative to the Legislative Council. Without objection, we will move to that item now. Mr. Calderon, are you ready to proceed with SCR1?
He adjourned the first extraordinary session. No, we're in general session. Yes, Mr. Speaker, and members.
You are ready to proceed. Thank you.
Oh.
The clerk will read.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 1 relative to the selection of the Legislative Council of California.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, this resolution is relative to the appointment of Diane F. Boyer-Vine for the office of Legislative Counsel of California. Ms. Vine has been the Legislative Counsel since June of 2002. She first joined the office in 1988. She has been advising the legislature in a nonpartisan way since then and even before. She is highly competent, having graduated from my alma mater, which is University of California, Davis, King Hall School of Law, and is quite accomplished, and I won't read her accomplishments, but certainly anyone who's worked with her understands that she is appropriately nominated for this position. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, we will move to a vote on SCR1. The clerk will open the roll. This resolution requires 41 votes. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 79, noes 0. The resolution is adopted. Is there any further business to come before the House? Seeing and hearing of no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon.
I move to adjourn.
Mr. Calderon moves. Ms. Conway seconds that we adjourn. The motion I'm sorry. Mr. Calderon moves, Ms. Conway seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion carries. The House stands adjourned until Monday, January 3rd, 2011, where upon call of the Speaker, the quorum call is lifted.